Yokozo. Alright, today I'm trying something a little bit outside of my comfort zone here. I'm doing a little bit of an arts and crafts project. I'm going to be taking some of these supplies in front of me and crafting a series of pen trays for fountain pens so that all of my beautiful, and this is not all of them, but my beautiful fountain pens have nice trays to rest in. I didn't feel like purchasing an option from anywhere because I figured the majority of them were either overpriced for cheap quality, cheap materials, or maybe appropriately priced, but outside of the price range I felt comfortable with. I've spent a lot of money on pens recently. I don't really want to spend a lot of money also on somewhere to store them if not necessary. And also, it's honestly, it's not even just about the cost of pre-made options. Part of it's the fact that I couldn't really find much of anything that looked nice. It's so generic. It's just like, you know, I've spent a lot of time previously in cigars as a hobby, and a lot of those humidors, it's just like they're all factory made, which, don't get me wrong, factory made isn't a bad thing necessarily, but they just, it's all the same product, right? It's like the first blueprint was made and everybody copied it and nobody innovated and nobody added style to it. And, you know, unless you're going to spend way more money than you probably should, you're just never going to get something custom. So you really have to go outside of the eBays and the Amazons and, you know, those places, and you really have to find something custom, or do what I'm doing here. I'm going to build something custom. It's not by any stretch of the means going to be the best thing ever. In fact, it might end up being quite worse than many of those pre-made options, but it will be something I have done, and that's what I'm looking forward to. So my basic plan is that I have this roll of self-adhering felt. It's not the prettiest felt, it's not the nicest feeling felt, but I'm treating this as a very beginner project. You know, I've not done a lot of handmade things of this variety, so I figured let's go with some materials that I can afford to mess up with. One of my original ideas was to get these squares of felt, different colors, a nicer quality, a nice wool felt or merino felt, whatever they were. But they you know, two problems. One, they were a little bit more expensive, and so my mistakes would cost me a little bit more. And also, they were a smaller size. Even the large pieces didn't give me a lot of room to maneuver. So, you know, it's funny I mentioned the whole cigar thing, because what I'm actually doing is building these trays to fit inside of an old humidor of mine. So it's really not a large box. It's, you know, I have the measurements written down somewhere, but I mean, I'm working with, you know, something that's like, I don't know, 10 by 8 or something in that range, inches, to fit inside of. You know, it's really a small zone, but a lot of the pieces of material were like 10 by 8 or, you know, 12 by 12 or 12 by, you know, so I didn't have much room because I'm going to be overlapping, and my basic idea is that I'm going to lay down these dowels on some kind of a board. And I have two options of boards. I need to figure out which one is going to work better for me. One's more of a chipboard. It's a harder, you know, it's a solid piece of material that I'll have to cut down in size. And then the other idea is these art boards that are, you know, a lot thinner. So I don't have a lot of time, and I only have 3 of them, so I don't have a lot of room to make mistakes here as well. But I don't think I'm likely to make mistakes too much here, because I'm basically going to cut these down to size, and then that's all that the mistakes I could possibly make if I cut them too small. But I have to figure out which material to use, and then on these boards I'm going to put the dowels to sort of build, you know, space apart my sort of sides, as it were, inside for the actual like slots for the pens to go, and then the felt's going to wrap over top of that and just give a nice surface. I'm going to look at putting a little bit of an angle to it, you know, maybe using an extra dowel on the underside, and that's about it. It's really, you know, it's a pretty simple sounding project. but we'll see how it goes. But that's what I'm setting out to do today. So I'm going to attempt to record the rest of this footage as time lapse, and maybe I'll recap at the end and see how it went. All right, let's get to it. All right, well, that's a wrap. Project was interesting. In the end, I have a box that holds 25 pens. Certainly had to change strategy as I went. The way that I built my internal shelves, I didn't really know how to do them in the beginning, and each one of them, the two of them, are actually done a little bit differently from each other. They have little ledges on them so that, as you're tilting, the pens hopefully won't fall out. They're not perfect. A lot of the felt I'm using may come undone over time. But for now, I have a nice box that holds 25 pens. Pretty cool.